everybody, welcome to the Fire Up with CJ show. Today we have Randy Taran in part two of the three-part series in which we're talking about happiness. In the first segment, we talked about what is the nature of lasting happiness and an exploration that some students did with some incredible people like the Dalai Lama, neuroscientist Richard Davidson, and George Lucas. And so, which you can find in the movie Project Happiness. Now, at the very end of that segment, we were talking about how happiness is a quality that all of us would like to have, and that there are actually changes that we can make in our brain, that we can change the way that our brains are wired to actually increase our happiness, and that it's actually a skill like anything else that you learn. It's a skill that we can cultivate, develop, and practice. And we're going to find out all about that with Randy. So, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Who doesn't want to talk about happiness?
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about the scientific research that you found when you were looking at and it's so what's so interesting is in the first segment you're talking about transcendent moment where people have a personal experience where they know that happiness is possible, but we all, in order to be convinced to get even in those states, I think sometimes we need to know the scientific proof. So I wanted to get that from you and what you found.
Okay, well, let's jump in with something called PERMA, and that's from Dr. Martin Seligman, who's called the father of positive psychology. So PERMA is an acronym that stands for P is for positive emotions, like gratitude, generosity, mindfulness. What we intentionally focus our attention on will grow, and that's one part. And just let me give you a little bit on gratitude. Gratitude is such a fabulous entry point to developing the skill for greater happiness, because everyone can be grateful for something. You can be grateful for a cup of coffee or tea. You can be grateful for the sun on your back. You can be grateful that you have a roof over your head. You can be grateful for your breath, so, and once we learn to recognize, actually we have to pause first in order to recognize these things. But when we do and we focus more on that, guess what? It shows up more in our lives. And Dr. Robert Emmons, who is a psychologist and researcher on gratitude, reports that we can increase our life satisfaction 25%. 25%, and one of the most lovely things to do is to write a gratitude letter to someone who has impacted your life, maybe seen things in you that you were not able to see in yourself. And if they're around and you can deliver that letter and read it out loud to them, you'll never forget that moment. That will stay with you your whole life, Another thing about positive emotions is life happens to us, right? The good and the bad. But how we frame the events in our life, how we interpret them, the narrative that we choose. You can be a victim in your story, and that's easy. Or you can choose to be the hero or the heroine that's gone through the dark valleys and learned new things and has grown from the inside and is using that on the next pathways. So how we interpret these events really determines our happiness.
And was there some acronym that you were using before? You said, was there some acronym? What was it?
It was PERMA.
PERMA, okay.
Yes, and E is for engagement. So that's, have you ever experienced when hours feel like minutes? You're so immersed in something, whether it's a creative pursuit or a conversation or gardening, whatever, going on a run, that you're in a flow state. So that's really another aspect of flourishing. And then R is for relationships, another key to thriving, how we relate to others, our friendships, the sense of closeness. It can extend your life, especially now when 40% of adults in the US alone are self-reporting as lonely, right? You know,
What percent?
40.
Oh my gosh. Wait,
Yes,
is that irrespective of age?
yes,
Oh my
4 out of
gosh.
10. 4 out of
Oh
10.
my gosh. Okay.
And then M is having a sense of meaning and purpose. And that also makes people happier. You know, if you've ever asked, why am I here? Then, and most people do from time to time, then you kind of get a sense of it. And also, what makes me feel alive, most alive? And that's one way of finding your purpose, you know, what makes me feel alive. And the other is what touches my heart so deeply that I want to help. You know, I have to help. You know, that was the case for me in this whole happiness journey. It didn't leave me alone. I had to do it. And then finally, A is the best type of accomplishment. A is for accomplishment, is putting energy into something that is aligned with your values, you know, that sits well with you and makes you feel like you're making a difference. And that's your why.
Okay. So it's positive emotions and interpretation and the narrative of the story that you talk
Yes.
about,
Yeah.
engagement and getting in flow states and feeling enthralled with your work or whatever you're doing, relationships, meaning and purpose, and accomplishments. And these were from Dan
Dr.
Siegelman.
Selig.
Selig. Okay, got it. And
Yeah.
how do these relate to the 7 happiness habits? And I assume these are related to the things on your website.
Yes, yes, yes. So the 7 happiness habits are all grounded in science. The first one is Mindful Monday.
Hmm.
So there is so much research that mindfulness um, it increases your focus and concentration. It improves relationships. It helps you sleep better. It boosts your immune system, um, makes you mentally stronger, and it improves empathy and compassion. And actually, it physically changes the structure of the brain. Also, it reduces stress and anxiety, depression, inflammation, all these things. But basically, it allows you to return to your core essential self, who you really are beyond, you know, the anxiety, beyond the fears. It's who you are deep on the inside, you know, that you feel maybe when you're in nature or when you're in that quiet moments, you know? So that's a huge one. And it said that, um, you know, all these thoughts, these chattery thoughts are like clouds in the sky, you know, but they come and they go. And really, you know, we are the sky. We are that vast inside, you know. Um, the second habit is gratitude. And we spoke a little bit about that, how it has the potential to make you 25% happier, you know, and it's said that people who feel gratitude are able to give back to others because they feel abundant, they feel full, you know, life is good, and it's really one of the most pivotal practices. So if somebody were first coming into, I want to be happier, what should I do? I would say start with gratitude. Start with gratitude.
Okay.
You know. Then the and we talked
Wednesday. Wednesday,
Wednesday
freedom,
wellness. You know
wellness.
that has to do. Okay, according to Harvard Public School of Public Health, happiness and health are clearly linked. You know, scientifically. So what can we do to promote our health? Um, moving the body not only builds muscles, but it builds your brain. It releases a certain protein. It helps you get out of your head and into your body, you know? So important. It releases the stress hormone, cortisol. You come back to yourself. Um, Sleep, super important because a lack of sleep leads to inflammation in your brain and decreased strength in your immune system. And, you can get more colds if you don't have enough sleep and you stay more stressed. And the brain doesn't have a chance. They call it sleep hygiene for a reason because you're actually cleaning the stress from your brain. And then we come to foods, the nutrition. Well, fast foods, refined sugar, we all know this stuff. It gives us the peak highs and then the lows, the quick lows. If we can find foods that have healthy fats like avocado or omega-3, fruits and vegetables, we fight off inflammation. And that helps in regulating our emotions too. And this is something that everybody knows. This is not anything new. But sometimes, what we know in our head is not what we put into practice. So it's an invitation that little shifts can cause very big changes.
Yeah, I
And
think the key thing when I think about that, I think about yoga, where it's the integration of mind, body, and spirit. So
totally,
you can change your mind on Mindful Monday or on Tuesday, Gratitude Day, but you can also change you can change the reading on your dial by changing your body, which then affects your mind and your thoughts. It's
it's
all
all
connected. Yeah.
connected, all
Okay, and
connected.
what happens on Thursday is freedom?
Thursday, thoughtful Thursday.
Thoughtful. Okay.
Yeah. And that has to do with thinking of others, altruism, doing as random acts of kindness for someone else. And that's a pillar of happiness. And actually, Richard Davidson, who we interviewed in the film, says the best way to activate positive emotion circuits in the brain is through generosity.
Mm.
And generosity triggers a bath of chemicals that makes us feel good. So that's serotonin makes us happy. Cortisol decreases. Oxytocin, which is called the cuddle hormone, that elevates,
Right.
making us feel more connected. So, and it doesn't even have to be about money. It's a kind word. It's a smile. It's just acknowledging another human being. Sometimes that could save a life. We hear stories about people ready to jump off a bridge, but somebody just smiled at them or saw them as a human and they changed their mind and therefore they're alive today.
Yes,
You
one time I had a guest who said a smile is the shortest distance between 2 points, and I love that because,
know?
and I've been recently, I walk around and I notice that people are smiling at me, and I'm not even sure if I'm smiling and they're smiling back at me. Like, I don't even know who initiated it,
Yeah.
but just having a world where everyone is smiling at you, it just a happier, kinder place. Like you feel better about the world from
It
that.
changes everything,
Yeah.
that little thing.
Yeah.
And it's an expression, happiness is a perfume you cannot pour on others without getting a few drops on yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and Friday.
And Friday is Freedom Friday. So that's all about being free to be yourself, authentic, vulnerable, letting go of those limiting beliefs that would keep you stuck, that no longer serve you. You know, um, we think that by having a wall we keep out the bad, but we also keep
Out the good.
keep the
It's a
good,
wall that keeps out everything.
keeps out everything, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how about
And then
Saturday?
Saturday social, it's about connecting.
Okay, we've talked
Um,
about that.
we've talked about that.
And how
And
about Sunday?
Sunday soul is actually having to do with connecting to your inner compass, your inner guidance, your inner wisdom, something that you connect with, in the quiet moments, as I said, or in nature. And we have so much wisdom available to us. And one little trick of getting around it is, imagine you had a wise, strong, confident, loving version of yourself, your future self, standing right at your side. And they are giving you some advice, maybe whispering in your ear,
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of us.
Yes, I love it. It's our
Yeah.
our highest self speaking to our
Yeah.
highest, they would call it our soul. Some people would say our soul or spirit side, talking
Yeah.
to a regular self that's running around
Yeah.
grocery shopping, etc. Okay. All right. So I want to, as we wrap up the segment, also talk about emotions. And you talked about earlier about positive emotions
Mm-hmm.
and PERMA and the importance of having positive emotions. And that's the topic of your most recent book, Emotional Advantage: Embracing All Your Feelings to Create a Life You Love. So tell us about how emotional intelligence fits. I mean, talked a little bit about, already we've talked about gratitude and generating kind of mind states of gratitude and doing something thoughtful, which is generosity, freedom, which is kind of like letting go of the conditioning that you have,
Correct.
kindness, which is I see as part of thoughtfulness, and then creating a different story in which you're not the victim necessarily. Maybe you're
Yeah.
the hero or part of a collective creating a similar journey. But tell us a little bit, like, what other kinds of things do we need to know about emotions, and what prompted you to write the book?
Well, on our weekly Facebook lives, I was getting more questions, not about happiness, but about anxiety, about stress, about anger, about fear, all the so-called negative emotions. And it was like, wow, this is coming up more and more. There's something going on here in the culture. And yes, there is. We're living, as I said, in anxious times. And more people feel that there's so much in life that they can't control. And that's the truth of it. There is a lot. But what we can control are, well, not control. And I want to say this
Relate
really
to differently, maybe.
distinctively. It's not about controlling our negative emotions or suppressing them. Like, don't be angry, never be angry, you know, uh, push away fear, just do it, all that kind of stuff. Those are some of the messages. But there are basically three ways of dealing with the so-called negative emotions. And by the way, we love the positive emotions, no problem with
Right.
those, but we run from the negative. So accepting, number one, accepting how we are feeling is super important, because um, when that comes into our awareness, that we can accept what we are feeling and that it is real, like, yeah, I'm dealing with a really bad day. What am I going to do about it? And then you can come to choices. If you deny it, if you suppress it, then, that works in the short run, right? You can keep calm and carry on, but at one point when you least expect it, that emotion is going to flood you, you know? And why wait for that eruption? Or why wait for that implosion? Because people deal with emotions three ways. One is they can explode, whether it's into tears or into anger or whatever. Second is that they suppress. It's not safe to express their emotions, so they keep it bottled inside and often turn it on themselves. That's why suppressed anger can lead to feelings of depression. But the third way, which is the more skillful way, is what Dr. Dan Siegel calls name it to tame it. So that has to do with being aware of what you're feeling, the emotions, and then naming them, give them a name. Am I feeling irritated or frustrated? Or am I feeling white hot rage? There is a spectrum of emotions there. And knowing where you are on that spectrum will allow you to tame it. In other words, to find skillful strategies to work with what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And emotions are not our enemies, they're actually our friends. Why is that? Because emotions, the definition is energy in motion. So they are giving us information, they're giving us data points, and to inform our life, to either protect us or give us information that we need going forward. And, once we can accept that emotion, we're like, knowledge is power. We can make a better decision.
Okay, got it. So we are going to, it's a perfect segue into our next segment, which we are going to be talking about taking advantage of your emotions so that we can have a loving relationship with our emotions and not either repress our emotions and stuff them down or explode. So we're looking at skillful means, how to name it and take it, as Dan Siegel had talked about. And so we're going to, in the next segment, talk about some of the ones that you said were most popular that you're seeing on your website: anger, guilt and shame, anxiety, and worry. And specifically, what kinds of things may we do to go even further in terms of deepening or understanding what to do. We've been talking to Randy Taran, who is the founder of Project Happiness, that you can find all over social media, and also find out more about Mindful Mondays, Tuesday Gratitudes, Wellness, all the things that we just talked about. If you want to participate, and when you go to those websites, you'll see some really interesting facts and some inspirational ideas for you to live in congruence with those things. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.